So as we get started this evening, I want to introduce Craig Galati, FAIA from LGA, to give a brief introduction on today's meeting.
Great. Thanks, John. So I'm really excited to see you guys all here today. So this has been kind of a brainchild over the last summer. And so on behalf of John Sparrow, our Fellows Chairman, and the rest of the Fellows Committee, we're all AIA Nevada. So there's fellows in Reno, there's fellows here. What we wanted to do is kind of start to live the mission of fellowship, and that is to educate and to mentorship and to teach and coach and pass on our knowledge to the next generation. And so that's one of the things we're trying to do tonight. So this is the first in 4 sessions that are going to be. It's going to be probably 2 this year and 2 in the spring. We're going to hit different things on the business of architecture. So tonight is about leadership and culture, building culture within firms. The next one will be about recruiting, retention, and which is a hot item right now. That one will be in Reno. So you guys will be able to watch that one on Zoom, just like the folks from Reno are watching this one on Zoom. So we want to make sure that we get this whole state connected, because there's really great architects up there as well. And so then the next one after that will probably be marketing. That'll be down here. And then the following one, which will be about financial management and how we write proposals and how we figure out things. So that's the idea, is to give you these, and then we'll see what happens next year. What I would like to ask you though is, this is the first one we're doing. It's the first time we're trying it. If you have comments, things that we can do to make it better, please email Carlos and you'll get it to the Fellows Committee, and we'll keep working on it. But we got a great panel tonight, and we'll turn it over to our moderator, Kayleigh, Hasshaw, who is TJK Consulting Engineer. So, let it rip.
Thank you. My name is Kayleigh Hasshaw. I am the Director of Operations and sit on the Executive Management Team with TJK Consulting Engineers. I also am sitting on the board as the Ally Director for AIA. Thank you for having me to moderate. I'm excited for this discussion, and I love being involved in the AEC industry, so we'll get going. To start off, leadership happens at many levels within a firm. Sometimes you find it finds you, and how does one prepare themselves when that time comes? So to start off, I'd like each of you first to introduce yourselves and maybe give us a few words on how you define leadership first. Bill, you want to start?
Sure. Leadership. I mean, never ask anybody to do something if you wouldn't do yourself. And best start by doing it first and showing them that you can do it yourself. Whether that's cleaning the restroom or picking up garbage in the parking lot, or leading everybody in the presentation. It builds camaraderie and shows everybody that you're not too good yourself to do anything.
And lead by example is kind of what you're saying. That's great. This is Bill Snyder, by the way.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Everyone knows.
He doesn't need to be correction. That's one of my favorite people. So, questions like, how do you define leadership?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on what leadership maybe means to you, or how do you define it?
You can define it in so many different ways. All you can do is tell stories about how it works. That's kind of what Bill just did in some respects. You've got to lead firms. And really, there's 3 places to lead in our profession. You're going to lead your company, folks, sort of internally, and then you lead the community you live in. There's leadership there. You have to take the opportunity to present themselves, to take those chances and lead your community. Then you lead the profession. And you can do that through what we're all sitting here in the AIA offices now, leading the profession. Those are the 3 arenas I see. Now, how do you define that? By grabbing the brass ring when it comes along, and volunteering and getting involved in all of the organizations that you can. That's how you start to get involved in every aspect of this practice. And it's beyond the practice. It's our community. It's elevating the human experience. And that's what I always try to tell our staff. We're doing more than just drawing buildings and drawing pictures. We're trying to elevate the human experience. That's the leadership that it takes to run successful practice and be a successful organization.
That's advanced, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott Acton, Forte. These guys covered, I think, the gamut of lead by example. Do what you say and say what you do is a big part of it. I think the foundation of leadership is trust. And if they don't believe you or trust you, I think that leading a team is very difficult. So when the chips are down and the shots are being fired, standing up and taking a bullet down really helps to lead the overall vision.
Can I tell a story? One of my favorite books is The Servant.
Servant leader.
So Scott and I were in Vistage, as a leadership group, and our tech leader was always giving us great books. And The Servant was my favorite. And it talked about how when the baby boomers came back from World War II, but speak up,
Speak louder.
louder. Okay,
You must be getting feedback.
but we're not having any, we don't have mics, so I'll try to project as best I can. So, when the baby boomers came back from World War II, not Vietnam, they set up their companies, like they did in the military. There was the generals and the colonels and the majors and that, because who was at the bottom? You know what I mean? And they set up their companies like that. Well, you know what? That doesn't work because our clients are here. So inverting the pyramid was my paradigm shift to leading an organization from the bottom up. I'm at the bottom of my organization. My staff are at the top because my clients are those who serve. So when you go through that sort of notion, my idea is that I have to help my managers manage, and managers help our staff do their work. So it's always a helping process. And so it is a humbling scenario. It's a different construct. But once you get your arms around it, things work better.
Thank you. I think it leads into the next question, and maybe you guys can sum up in a couple words some of the attributes that some of the best leaders that you've been worked for or observed. What does that look like? Some of the best attributes.
I graduated high school at 17. Not that I was smart, I just started early. I got a job with an architect and worked for him for quite a while. And I was 18, at 18 and a half, I got drafted. But I didn't tell the architect I worked for. He sat me down and he said, let me give you some advice. He said, I spent 5 years in architecture at Yale. During the Korean War, I spent 3 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. And I learned more there than I did in Yale. Do whatever you have to do to get in the Corps of Engineers, which I did. And that was, I think, the start of a lot of my leadership and my training, not to mention when I was in Vietnam, the major that I worked with was kind of things that you can count the people on your one hand, and hopefully it helps you through your life that you are your mentors. Hopefully, the first two are your mother and father. The third was my architect that I worked for out of high school. His name was Hugh Moore Jr. His father, Hugh Moore, during the epidemic in 1918, started Dixie Cup. Everybody before that was drinking water out of a pail and a ladle. And he designed and came up with Dixie Cup. And so Hugh Moore Jr. that I worked for, that was his father. And he was one of those guys. And the next guy is your drill sergeant with basic training. You hated his guts. He started to tell you when you graduated, I know most of you hate my guts. My job is to teach you how to stay alive in combat. For those of you that wind up there, you will appreciate me. The rest of you, I don't give a shit about. And you start to appreciate them. And then I'd have to say George Tate. And George Tate is still alive and doing well. The interesting story with George Tate started out years ago. He was partners with Tom Dabrowski. which became KGA,
EKG.
DKG, and then KGA. But George and Tom were partners many years ago. George's wife died a number of years ago, and George wound up marrying about 5 or 6 years ago, Peggy Dombrowski. And so, I mean, interesting story with George. But George is really, George was a great architect to work for, and just a very inspirational guy. So those are my 5.
We have to do 5.
No. One person or one attribute will suffice.
And then, of course, Ed is encouraging everybody to go for their FAIA. And Ed, who's, running right through all the way up to the top. Way to go.
I'm just going to give, so I worked for a couple of firms, not many. I mean, I was, when I first got to town, I worked for Swisher Hall, way before you were there. And then I got stolen away by Schumann to go join JMA, and I was at that company for 20 years. And so the person that taught me everything, most everything I know about getting involved in the community and leadership was Tom Schumann. He also was alive and well. Yeah, just finished his house out of Las Vegas. He's the one that said you have to get involved in the community. Got me involved in the Boy Scouts, the Discovery Children's Museum, banks, and those are the things that allowed me to come to
Opportunity Village.
Opportunity Village. Exactly. And oddly enough, many of those are still clients. It's kind of great, but by giving back to the community, you get that back in spades. They come to you then because they know that you were participating in the community that we all live in. So I can't talk about community enough. But as for leadership, I'm going to share a story with you that I just listened to the other day. How many know of Simon Sinek? Yeah, he told a story the other day that he has a little podcast, and he said he was in a beautiful hotel, and there was a barista in the Starbucks, and he goes, "So how do you like your job?" And he goes, "I love my job." And he goes, "Whoa." So like my job is one thing. Love my job, that piqued his interest. He goes, "Well, tell me why you like your job." And this is going to speak directly to what you're going to talk about, future about retention. He said, why do you love your jobs? Well, I work in 2 different places, but this place is fantastic. Why? He says, every time I turn around, the manager's coming up to me and asking me, how can I help you do your job better? And it's not just the one. All of them ask for that. And so I feel like I'm welcome here all the time, and I can't. The other place, when have you got this stuff done? When you're late for work, blah, blah, blah. Just giving me a lot of, I just keep my head under the radar and I do an adequate job. The other place, I want to excel and do better. So when you talk about leadership and running your firm, or in this community programs that you find yourself in, that's the kind of thing that makes you special. And that's the kind of thing that we all need more of. I agree.
I didn't actually work directly for him, but I worked for the Walt Disney Company. So one of my heroes is Walt Disney. And in that management training program, my boss was Dave Frigo. And my grandfather worked for Walt Disney as a plasterer and pioneered the whole rockwork system. And my dad went to work there. He was a self-taught animator, built the original Jaws attraction at Universal. So as a 16-year-old kid, for punishment, I was to sweep this big warehouse with a shark staff. And they wanted me to go back to school. And I fell in love with the creative process of problem solving. And so one of my dreams as a 20-year-old was to work for Disney. So I called this guy, Dave, once a week. Every Wednesday, Dave, I really want to work. And finally, after 9 months, he said, if you can get here now, I'll interview you. And it was for a staff shop position. It was a blue-collar job, mold making, sculpting, silicone molds, things like that. And this guy was patient with me. This guy listened to me, and I was a pain in the ass kid. And I would go in there every day. I'd change back into my clothes. I'd go in his office. I'd say, Dave, I'm going to take your job someday. Is there anything I can do? Like, I'm going to clock out. I'm going to stay after, and I want to learn from you. And he let me do all these little tasks for him. But along into the year, there was a sign that went up that said management training program, and to work here 2 years and a 4-year degree. I was there a few months and I was a high school dropout, but I wrote a letter about my experience with him and what I did. And the VP sponsored me. And so the leadership they instilled in me was when someone raises their hand, give them a chance, take a bet on people. When you believe in them, like Ed alluded to, is that, how can I help you do better? What tools are you missing? How do we operate better as a team? That book, Leaders Eat Last, is another military book about in the mess hall. The people in charge don't eat until all the get crazy. So it's about not being selfish and giving someone else an opportunity. So that opportunity, I'll never forget. That guy will be a hero for the rest of my life.
And for what it's worth, he's my hero. I've known about this guy and what he's accomplished over the years. He has made more mistakes and more successes than all of us in our entire lives. Times two. This guy's a risk taker, but he's a genius at looking at opportunities, getting people to work toward a common goal. I mean, your offices are amazing. I go over there and was like, shit, this is better than an architect's office. I mean, really, you're the leader that we can't even compare.
Well, Scott, and I just reminded we want to project a little bit for those on Zoom. So I think they're still struggling, and those on Zoom will have Q&A at the end. So
if you were here in person,
you can put questions in the chat, and I'll check those towards the end. But yes, we will try to talk a little bit louder. So we're gonna, for those in person, we might be screaming at you. But Scott, you transformed and doubled a company in over 2 years. So how did your leadership style contribute to that success, would you say?
I think that exactly what we're doing is, I'm willing to go out and clean the shop. I was willing to do whatever it takes. So they would work at the pace I was working. And so when leading by example, it was also good timing, the right team behind me. It was just a lot of luck. But it was when the market was at its lowest point. And then another what Carnegie said, when everyone else is running out, run in. So the construction business in 2010, everyone's balance sheets were in tatters. It was a mess. Everyone was, going through really, really difficult financial times. I thought, this is a perfect time to start a construction business. And everyone thought I was crazy. Like, you're going to lose whatever you have left. Because I had gone through the downturn as rough as everyone else. So it was a very difficult start. But it paid off. Yeah. Not quitting, I think, is number one.
Never quit. Never quit.
And for the others, how do you adapt leadership styles to your company?
Adapt leadership. Well, I think your office is a petri dish, right? I mean, every time you add somebody, the dynamic changes. And so you're always looking for adding the people that are going to get along with the folks you've already got. And I used to have a pretty damn big firm, and it was a nightmare to get that to work well. So having 20 people is much easier. But when you add that in, you have to adapt. But the same principles that we've been talking about still that underpins everything. And so, leaders eat last. I pay some of my people more than I make because they're doing more work. So when you start doing those kinds of things, that helps.
Yeah.
Speak up.
Carlos is in the back.
Yell at the mic, please.
Yell.
Yell at the mic.
And the mic's where the camera is?
Oh, right.
Or the computer?
So,
Okay.
Yell at that. Sorry.
Okay. But so before we actually move on to vision, do you guys want to share what the hardest decision you've done as a leader, and did anything help you sort of make the best course of action on that? Anything you'd like to share?
You could be here all night.
just one.
Exactly.
Let's not get into lawsuits.
Yeah.
The frivolous lawsuits,
I'll start, make it simple.
Okay.
When the big recession happened, and we all had to face this, laying off
That's
80% of my firm
That's
was absolutely the most grueling thing I've ever gone through. and it just made me sick to my stomach. Physically, it affected me. Putting people, sending them home. The responsibility you have when you're running a company. Is
It's a family.
Yeah.
It's a family.
You're paying for the work you're doing generates the money necessary to pay all of those mortgages and car payments, food on the table, and you have to bear that. That's
Yeah.
hanging on you as the owner, right? You all, those of you at firms, you understand that. So when you have to let that go, it's just sickening. And that was the hardest decision I had to make. And I was late in it, by the way. I should have done it sooner because I almost lost everything. Almost.
I think that the toughest thing I went through was, I had sold my business in 07. And so I was like, wow, lucky, got out right before. Blah, blah, blah.
You were a genius this time.
Oh, yeah, smartest guy in the room, right? And then, it started to crumble in front of me, and there was still 100 people working there. And the private equity guys came and said, hey, we'll sell this back to you for $1. We'll take it back. We'll do it, yeah. And then for anybody who's transacted or sold or had a liquidity event, a lot of these private equity guys are like roulette players. They'll buy 15 companies, only one of them's gonna make it, the rest of them, they don't care, they wipe it off, right? So, full of fear, not having the business, I turned it down and I let them shut it down all the way. And I had to go tell all these people that it was over. And the subsequent 2 years before I started Forte were some of the toughest 2 years of my life. And it took me a while to reconcile that. So yeah, the human factor in this, like leadership is, and I can go back to it and say, it's a lot about parenting, because you're gonna have, and you can call it family, whatever, there's a lot of children in the house, and we've got 200 people there, and the kids are gonna fight, someone's gonna steal your sandwich, and how you deal with that and how you get there to get along is a huge challenge. But I like it to
I got involved with a project many years ago, that had mafia influence in it. And
allegedly.
no, they did. Because I wound up as a special witness for the RICO strike force.
Oh.
And I can tell you, the FBI wanted me to have a bodyguard or bodyguards, never drive to work the same way and all that kind of stuff.
Jesus.
And, we wound up in federal court, and 8 or 9 of these guys got much time. The leasing agent wound up dead while all this was going on. And I had a window shot out in my car visiting a job site. And the last couple of visits I made to the job site, the general contractor said, I don't want you to go anywhere without Louis. And Louis showed me his 38 and his Derringer and said, stay arm's length and to me. And then everything came down. One day I was on the phone in my office, just minding my own business, talking to probably some consultant who was trying to get some work out of us. And my secretary came in and she put 2 business cards on my desk. One was Special Agent IRS and the other was FBI. And they're in the conference room. And I went in the conference room. They drilled me for about 4.5 hours. And then they told me the strike force attorney is probably going to want to talk to you. And I went and we chatted for a few hours. And he said, I want you to be a special witness for our strike force. And one of the things that these guys did, they put a $2 million lien, phony lien, on the project, and they worked that into their performa. So the first draw they got $2 million right off the bat to pay off the phony lien. Anyway, it was
Really?
so that was the kind of hairy time. But I have to tell you, if you always do the right thing and follow the right instincts, you will be okay. And I was a little, my wife was petrified, but we got through it. And I sat through probably 7 or 8 trials in federal court in the Guy George court as the special witness for the RICO strike force. And
What year was that?
that was back in probably about 82.
What project did you say?
Commercial center,
Oh,
farmer's market. Farmer's market was the old Von Tobel's, which was way before we had Home Depots, okay? So they were like, so it was this big empty building, and you know, these guys got this idea that they were gonna turn it into this mall with restaurants and shops, and it really was going pretty well. And I don't think these guys, all these guys I think wanted to do was get their $2 million from the start and be gone. And I think that's how come the leasing agent wound up dead in the meantime. And anyway, so that was
the hard decision.
Yeah.
To take the case. That was.
well, I had no choice, okay? I had no choice. First, you know, you're being, I mean, how many times does an FBI come to your office with a special agent of the IRS and quiz you for 4 hours? I mean, that just like,
So they made the decision for you.
yeah.
Craig, I got your next topic. We'll just talk about this one story, dive into all the details.
Sorry, I didn't mean
No, that's great. That's so
just
interesting.
do the right thing
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. So Bill, you took over leadership for TSK and you helped shape one of the leading design firms in the Valley. So what was your vision when you took over the firm, and do you feel like you succeeded that when you
No.
retired?
Not get shot in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things to always look at is never be afraid to hire people who you think know more than you. That's, you know, I think to be the leader of a firm, number one, you've got to be a leader. You have to have leadership capabilities. But the other thing is, you need, you know, you may not be the expert at design and the expert at this and that, but from A to Z, you know a little bit about all that. So hire the best you can in all of those areas and lead them and get the best clients you can, and you'll have a successful firm. And never be afraid to hire somebody who you think knows more than you. Because in that case, they become a Wyndham Kimsey and he winds up owning the firm, okay? So he's your person that takes you out when you're ready to leave. And the firm goes on and becomes successful.
Always leave a place better than the common.
Absolutely.
What was, for Scott and Ed, what was your process for developing a company vision?
Okay, Scott first. So as much as I love working at Disney, I've designed my business around how not to be Disney. The corporate America, you had to die or kill someone to ever be promoted in a company that large, and so very stagnant. And a lot of the culture there was, if your work was done at 4 o'clock and Dave was still in his office, you played solitaire for an hour or whatever you did to keep busy before you went home. And so I designed a culture where it was trusting, there was freedom, and if you're on schedule and on budget, and your son or daughter has something meaningful, I don't want to see you at the office, but go and enjoy that and live a life. And I think that the baby boomers that drove this, you know, you better be at the office before me, and God help you if you leave before I do, you know, and I think that that old school mentality burns out a lot of people. And having people around you that you trust, some people take advantage of it, don't get me wrong, it's a, you know, if you get 8 out of 10 that are doing it right, then you're lucky, but you know, and I'm a playful prankster. And so the culture was very much around me. Everyone's got a Nerf gun. It's very flexible. We've got 4 or 5 dogs running around the office. Like it's just very, it's a real family environment, you know, and it's proven to be a wildly successful business, you know. And sometimes I think it gets a little out of hand now and again, but I can only look in the mirror and be like, "You started this."
So what was the question again?
It's about vision. So what was your process? That's okay.
That was my vision.
Culture's good.
Culture's good. We'll get to culture too. What was the process for developing the vision for EVNA?
Oh, how are you going?
Yeah. Smart. That's not true.
So we had just, you know, when I left JMA and started, I just gone through that whole process of, you know, reimagining what the firm should be. And at least I was familiar with what it took to start that process. And you can't do it yourself. You need to bring in experts. And so I would always advise anybody that's starting a company, or if you have one, you're going to rebrand or rethink this stuff, you need to bring in, strategic planning experts that can help you discover who you really are. And you need those ideas to bounce off those individuals and pull those nuggets out of you so that you can formulate a plan. And so we used Clyde on ours. He was our tech leader. Sorry. And we went through, it was a full 3 days before we figured it out. And I know, Nick, you just went through this, right? And so finding out who you are, it's different for all of us. For us, it was, the vision was always your elevator speech. What can you say in like 3 or 4 words that kind of encapsulates what you're all about? And ours was being the leader in the design experience, because we do private work, we don't do public work. So I work with developers and private people, and effectively, they're always complaining about the experience they had in the last architect. And we're like going, really, tell me what they did wrong. Or what did they do right, too. But we've tried to orchestrate and fashion the way we provide our services to our clients, so that the minute they call, from the time they go into our charrette sessions, to the time we produce the documents, the buildings, and the plans and the entitlements, right through to construction, it's all about how can we contribute to that design experience. So it's the most, because it's fraught with landmines and brain damage. What we do is not easy. Everybody understands that. Our job is to make it more pleasant as best we can. And that's our vision. But our mission is to be our client's trusted advisor, because I want them to trust me to give them advice on things that that other architects may not have. And I've been at it for a while.
Your client is always right, but you may choose to never work for them again.
That's
While
right.
you're working for them, and their best ideas come with suggestions from you. Always give them what they want or they ask for, but then show them a suggestion to make it a little better.
It's very good.
And then tell them what a great idea that was. Good job.
Good one.
And as far as hiring the experts, I spent probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can tell you what, I didn't need those experts. And if you want to hire an expert, hire me and I help you save that money, because all it was stuff that you already knew, but others wanted you to hear it from somebody else, okay? But I mean, some people get a lot out of it. That's good. And I just had a lot of thoughts with all this money paying so-called experts. And many of them never been through the same stuff that you guys have been through. And, they have a lot of suggestions and they follow some good rules. And, some people like that. Like, yeah,
Or somebody like that.
and yeah, it was somebody you knew. So, okay. Maybe it was your brother-in-law and he needed a job. Okay, that I understand. But you don't always have to listen to what he says. Anyway.
So you set the vision, the mission. What are some steps, kind of a two-parter, what are some steps that you can take continuously every year to make sure you're reaching that? And how do you get everybody on your team on board so you're all moving in the same direction?
I think a lot of it comes from feedback from your clients, okay? I heard a story a while ago of a firm that specialized in educational facilities in another state. They did like gazillions of schools. And once a year, at no charge to the client, they walk the roof of those projects and write a report. And if it needs repair, there's a report that says this is what needs to be done. Well, that gets them in front of the people, the maintenance people, at no cost. But what a great way to market, instead of sending out a great brochure, we can do this, 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 and this, and show them what they need to do on a building or a project. You never let go of a project or a client that you've done. That it's yours forever. Until you get old enough and they tear that down to build something.
That's right. That's right.
Anyway.
Go down the line.
So I think the question was, how do you revisit this and fine tune what you have?
Yeah, get everyone on
You
board.
always have to, I think once you establish your core values and your mission statement, I think you can revisit them. But I would rather just constantly tune them up and just make sure that we're accomplishing those missions and those visions and every step we take. And it's always fun to introduce our clients to those missions and vision statements, because they're like, oh, that's good. And then culture-wise, we just, like, how many dogs do you have in your office? Too many, we just have one. Yeah. But that's a big icebreaker in the clients.
Yeah, they love it.
I know.
And what's in the apple?
Dog.
Oh,
Especially
So-
Brian for him.
Especially Brian. Since I answered the vision question, the culture.
we'll skip you on the culture one.
But our vision at the bottom of this was because of our thematic background, experiential, we did a lot of work with land, casinos and theme parks, I still do. It was about how do we take that experiential side and take it into a design build firm that helps all of the visionary architects and creatives really get all they can get out of the dollars and cents, because as it goes down the line from general to setup to support, since we self-perform 7 trades, we're able to really kind of design assist, BE, and come up with attachment details and framing details that make things more affordable. So I was all about what the experience was like at the end of the day, being an old Disney guy. And I knew what that meant to a food and beverage venue or a nightclub or a retail space for that matter, or an office. And so to watch all these designs be disassembled and what they end up being, I thought we could add value to that in a very difficult time in the construction market. And it worked out.
So we'll switch to culture. How do you, how does a firm culture develop? I mean, there's no such thing as no culture, right? One's gonna exist, whether you want it, but how did you develop your culture?
I don't think I did it on purpose. I think it's organic and it's natural, and it becomes, I mean, the original 5 or 6 that have been there, we kind of created this playful atmosphere. As people came along, we kind of, I liken it to an organ transplant. And if a new liver is installed and the rest of the body rejects it, you're gonna have a problem. So we really softly bring them in to kind of test it, to make sure that the blood type matches, and it's gonna work. Because when you have, especially in the leadership role, you bring someone in at a higher level, it's very easy for them to be rejected. And as a growing firm, we added 50 people last year.
Wow.
And so you can imagine what a challenge that was in just onboarding and you know, anyway. But it's something that you really have to leave to the universe for the most part. It organically grows, it organically changes. And I think that, yes, I started the business and probably the playful culture, but it's taken on a life of its own now. And I just try to be there to support it.
So you think that's how, would you say that's the support is the firm's leaders' role in that, in developing a culture?
Yeah, I think that once you put it out there that way, it's your job to support it, you know? And it's a belief system, and it's back to doing what you said. You said we could work like this and live like this. And so we're gonna do this. And you know, I told people, you know, I don't feel like going to work every day, and some days I just don't want to work or go to the movies or whatever. I said, your grandma doesn't have to die 7 times while you work here. You're just not feeling it that day. You can go to the movies. Like don't be here and be miserable and get it on someone else.
And how did your culture develop, and sort of what was your role in that?
You know, it's interesting. I'm kind of a Scott in that it's organic. It really, all of these parts and pieces, the human components. It's a biology experiment. It really is, and you have to just play it by ear. But treating everybody as an adult, which is kind of what you're saying. You know, if your hot water breaks, I don't want you to sweat bullets that you can't go home. Fix that. Go fix it. You know, you're not going to take your read for doing that. Just
Right.
your kid's sick, go home. And one thing COVID taught us: take our laptops home and go work if you need to, while they're fixing that water heater. So it can be productive as well. But
Who designed it?
but again, I mean, we're not the slave drivers like we are either. You know, so it's just we don't pull all-nighters. We try to schedule ourselves as best we can, so people aren't killing themselves to get the job done. JP's in the crowd. Where are you? You work overtime much? Not really. Like I said, JP's been with us for a while now. He's our golden boy and doing great. We love having him. And how much plant staff are doing? They're working probably.
Yeah.
And they're home with their family, damn it.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do. Just family comes first. Yeah,
Family comes first.
Yeah.
Family comes
What's your
first.
culture?
Oh, I think, we try to create a family culture. And Shelley, how many of our 4 o'clock in the morning bus trips with all the family and the kids to Disneyland did you go on?
Oh, about 5.
Did we have fun? I mean, one time we always had a bus with movies, and one time we got to Disneyland and the movie wasn't quite done. I gave the bus driver $100 to drive around the block a few times.
You had to watch Uncle Buck and
Uncle Buck, you gotta watch Uncle Buck. Come on. Yeah, no, I think the culture of the kids and the family, and you spend a third of your life at work, and you really need to enjoy what you do, which obviously architecture is really, it's such a caring profession that we all gotten into, because what we've designed is for the people that are going to use it. And we put ourselves in the place of the people that are going to use that building and try to make it better as if we were using it. And I think the people that we work with, we have deadlines, we have all kinds of things, we work hard, but we've got to share the responsibilities. Shelley had a baby, and 3 or 4, how long was it? 2 days later, she didn't want anybody to touch her freaking floor plan, so she brought the baby in, put the baby under her desk in a whatever the thing.
recycle box.
Yeah, and she finished the floor plan. Okay, now is that dedication, or is that? Well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you how stupid that was, but okay. So I didn't ask you to work all night. I said, I'll just come in early after you have the baby. But I think, that's the kind of thing. You're a family, and, as people have problems, you get involved in trying to solve those problems and try to help people. And that's what builds your culture. And you do the same thing with your clients, and your staff gets involved with the clients and vice versa. And I think that's what makes a successful practice and a successful life.
Do you guys have any sort of growing pains or different ways that you measure success with culture? It's kind of
Well,
supposed to be intangible.
I think the metric is, how many times you have to replace the people you have. As long as you have good retention, people are happy there. And kind of keep going. That's your metric. You're not going to keep everyone. I understand that. No, not everybody fits in.
But you've got to encourage them to go on and do better things that they want to do, and stay in touch with them. Shelley, she's not. I don't know. You didn't throw anything yet, right, Shelley? That's part of it. The people that have worked for you, you help them along their way, and you like to see them become successful. Like Eric Strain and Daniel Chenin, people like that have been part of your company, and you're happy to see them grow. You're happy to see them go off and follow their direction. And what makes you feel successful is that you see them into their own success. And it's not that they left your firm and you feel bad. They're following their own dreams, and you were part of helping them get to that. And I think that's always been my reward, is seeing those people go on and do what they want to do and be happy and be successful.
We're all products of that.
Yeah. And I think that's we're all up here, and this is what we all believe in, and hopefully you guys with your firms will kind of follow that same route. And it does come. It's the most rewarding thing that you can have, and your clients as well. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I did a few pro bono projects, and the principals of those schools wound up having a school named in my honor, which JMA designed. What kind of you can put all the plaques on the wall you want, but when I go down there and play with the kids once a week, it's like.
You get once a week? That's crazy.
But how could you, you can't put I'm humbled. I really, really am. And this has just been a great profession. And for me, and I, and we give back. That's part of what we do. We're involved with the community. the first thing that we learn is, how to think, don't tell me what you want to do. Tell me the problem you want to solve. And that's how we start our approach to things. So we're very logical in our thinking. So we wind up when we get involved with various, community organizations, that's how we think in a room of 10 people that all have an idea to do this, 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 and this, and this. And we can just sort of say, settle down. Let's see, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And we go from there. And I think that's why our training as architects is so important to being involved with the community, because we're logical people, and that's what we do.
Scott, do you have any, or kind of similar, or any other ways that you measure success when it comes to culture?
You're part of our profession.
Yeah, I think it's similar. I've told people, if you're happier there, it's better for your career. We've had a lot of CAD people work for us. We've had architects work for us, and we've had them go. And recently, one went over to Daniel, who we do a lot of work for. Called me, he's interviewed. I said, if it's better for his career, then he should be here. I'm just a believer there's enough for everyone. And I've had people in my business come to me and say, Scott, I really want to have my own welding shop. Will you show me? And I will mentor those guys in their own businesses, because that's what was done for me. I got a chance, I got a shot, And so, I just make sure they understand that. Are you comfortable with being overdrawn today? Payroll's on Friday and your Amex is shut off. Understand that day is going to happen if you're going to go into business.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That's all we love this guy.
So when we're in leadership positions, there always comes a responsibility. We've been talking about that for others, in terms of making sure they're well compensated, they're in a safe environment, their well-being, their mental well-being is good. I mean, the list kind of goes on. And Ed, I read a quote by you stating that architects have a duty to improve the lives of those who use our buildings. And paraphrasing, but so it got me thinking that as a leader, when developing a culture, we should approach it in the same way, recognizing that there is a duty to improve the lives of those on our teams. And I think you guys have been speaking to that, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah,
on that a little deeper?
Bill was kind of touching on that in his soliloquy here. We have the opportunity to improve the human condition with the buildings we design. True. And when we take that duty seriously, and we design buildings that, for example, school, we contribute to the education of the students who attend that school. Or if we're designing a medical building and we're improving the lives of healing properties or healing the patients in that building, that's when architecture transcends the built environment. That's when it becomes special. That's when it becomes more than the sum of its parts. It's a gestalt. And when you understand that, you really realize that that duty is so important that you take it seriously. And I try to instill that in everybody that works at the firm, and really try to tell that to my clients too. It's a great story to tell. And I think everybody can learn from that. And that whole idea was told to me by Tom Penny, who ran for, he was president in 05 or 06, came and visited us here in Vegas when he became, and why he came here, God knows, but I was sitting in the front row. He's become a close friend of mine. We've joint ventured on some projects. I will tell you, getting involved in the AIA, it's a little plug for the Institute, has helped my career, my company, survive the recession and some of the downtimes that we all will have during the course of running a practice. Because the connections and the relationships you establish across the country, it's invaluable. And so I can't say enough about getting involved in this institute at the highest levels if you can find yourself in that position.
Well, when it comes to the human side of it, I'll share something that's really uncomfortable. We have 200 people at our company, and there's death, divorce, sickness, dogs. There's everything that happens in life, right? And I hired a therapist 2 days a week to come to the office and have her run spot there, because there's such a stigma around people going to get help or asking for support, or people that are bleeding in some way. We're all damaged or dinged in some way. None of us made it this far without a dent or two, right? And so, and when I announced that, I Vance. It was really weird. But then the first couple of weeks, nobody would go near her, right? Do not walk by that door. There is a therapist behind that door. And now, you know, some of the emails I've gotten about this and how it's really, really changed a few people's lives. And, you know, so that whole part of this human experience is what the company's about. Because I say this all the time is, you know, all my assets wear shoes. You know, my balance sheet can say whatever, but without my team and without them being healthy and passionate and wanting to help others create these buildings, I've got no chance. So, yeah.
Really good.
Teamwork. Teamwork. It's, you know, I mean, a lot of us learned that starting out with sports or the military. You can't do anything by yourself, and you need a team. And how do you build that team? And how do you find the right people to build that team? And then how do you collectively get everybody to work together and have fun? I mean, that's what's important, and that's what life should be about. And you know, we spend so much of our time at work, and obviously we all enjoy what we do because of what sacrifices we've all made to get into architecture, which is a long road and a lot of struggle and a lot of work. And but it's a profession that affects so many people, and you'd be so proud of being an architect for what you do and what you do for society. And you never design a building without thinking about so many things the average person who's going to use that building doesn't think about. I mean, the number one is life safety. I mean, you know, we want to make sure that everybody in that building is going to be able to get out if there's an emergency. We look at that, and we look at security. How do we protect people that come in? How do we see, you know, who's going to come in and who's going to go? And then we have the whole environmental issue things. And I mean, not a big deal on weed, but I have to tell you a lead story. George Tate, years ago, many years ago, lead was just going, you know, and we had a bunch of people. You were still in the office, and Deepika, and they were so into lead. Okay, so we have George Tate come in to meet all the people that work at the office, and George Tate had the greatest sense of humor, the driest sense of humor. So it gets done, you know, we introduce George, and he's talking about this and that, and he had one of the questions was very energetic from one of the young gals in the office. Mr. Tate, what do you think now about the lead in architecture and all the lead buildings we're doing? George stops. He says, well, you know, in my day, we call that architecture. And he had another great story. He had a great story about starting out as a young architect. And he said, oh, I was so proud I designed this two-story building down on 3rd Street, and it had parking underneath. And, oh boy, and he said, and it was like, it was like my first major job. And it was like the contractor's first major job. Boy, we were so proud. We would go down to the building almost every day. We were just so proud of what we were doing. And one day this big Cadillac pulls up, and this big old guy gets out, and he says, hey fellas, what are you doing here? And he says, I'm the architect, and he's the contractor who building this building. He says, fellas, come on over here, I'm gonna show you something. And he points to a stake, and he says, you see this stake? That's my property from this stake to that stake. And your building is about 8 feet on the other side of this stake.
Oh,
What are you fellas gonna do? And George, only George, the way he sort of says, boy, he said, we mortgaged our houses to both of us. We borrowed all the money we could, and we bought that piece of land. And then only George states, you know, to this day, that's still the best investment I have. I get paid on that every month. But that, you know, those are the kind of things, doing the right thing. And George Tate was just a great guy that way. I mean, and I learned a lot from him, and he encouraged a lot of our staff to go on and do what the best they can. It was just he's still alive. We're still trying to. I think he's about 90 years old now, and he has a great story. He went to Utah State And he said, I was the only guy that had a car. And Frank Lloyd Wright was coming to speak. So I got the privilege of going to the hotel and picking up Frank Lloyd Wright. He said he was in the lobby of the hotel or at the bar of the hotel playing the piano. And I went over and I introduced myself and told him I was his ride. He said, so I took him back to the university, and he did his speech. And then we went back to the hotel, and he says, come on up. I want to come up to my room. And he said, he gave me this plaque. It was a plaque, and he said, I want to thank you for, he said, I don't need one more plaque. I got enough plaques. But how do you have this plaque for being my chauffeur tonight? So how many guys can say that story of a Frank Lloyd Wright? And he said, and he went back to the piano and he made me hang around while he played a few tunes. And then he drug me upstairs and he gave me this plaque.
So before we open up to Q&A and on Zoom and in person, my final question. So I love the way Brene Brown ends her Dare to Lead podcast and always asks this one question. What is one piece of leadership advice you have been given that is so great you need to share it with us, or so bad you need to warn us? Scott, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow, that's a really tough question.
I want to go with a book called Outwitting the Devil. It was written by Napoleon Hill and sat in a family trust from the late 60s until 2011, when it finally published. The wife said, don't print this book, I'm alive. And it's an interview with the devil, and it talks about drifting and about just kind of going wherever it leads you. It's a dangerous thing to do. So I think that for me, the best advice is stay focused on the goal, stay focused on the plan, and good things will come. Don't quit.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. What is one piece of leadership advice you have been given that is so great you need to share with us, or so bad you need to warn us?
This is great, and they work really well together. Which do you want first?
Either one.
I try to catch people doing good things in my office and speaking out about it, so to make sure everybody understands that this person just did something really outstanding. So I always catch people doing something great. I always like to do my rounds. It's like, look what he just did or she just did. This is outstanding. And then the opposite of that is never, ever criticize somebody in the office in front of everyone. If you're going to have a little conversation with somebody, take them in your office. You never address them in public. So that's my, I warn people, never do that. And I've seen that, it's horrible.
Bill, do you have good advice or bad?
Make your bed every morning. Because if you have a bad day, you have a good bed to come back to, and at least you've done one accomplishment for the day. There is a great book. I don't know if anybody read the book. Okay, there is a Navy admiral who gave that address at Texas A&M, I think it was, and he was a Navy SEAL. And he starts his whole speech with that, and then he goes through his whole, but as he says, at least you accomplish one thing before the rest of the day. And at the end of the day, no matter how bad your day is, you got a nice bed to go into. But he has, that's a great little simple book with a lot of great, and if you've read that, I mean, he is just fantastic. He talks about leadership and never second, guessing somebody. He talks about he wanted to become a Navy SEAL, and he went to in San Diego, SEAL training spot to get a spot. And while he was getting ready to go in and meet the captain that he was going to talk to and be interviewed by, he saw this long-haired little guy walking around in the lobby, and he thought to himself, this guy, I mean, he thinks he's going to become another SEAL. I've done all these things and I'm going to be a SEAL. And he said, when the captain got off the phone, I was called into his office, and he kept looking around the corner, and 5 minutes later, he says, excuse me, but I want to introduce you to the latest recipient the Medal of Honor and brought this guy in. And he said, you never judge anybody, never judge anybody. But that's a good book, and it's got a lot of good leadership. And it's pretty short, but it's really an inspirational book. And you've read it, and it's called Make Your Bed. And it's got a lot of good points for us to look at.
That's great. Does anyone have any questions here on Zoom? Good. Oh, wait.
I got a question for Scott. What was the company you sold in 2007? Also a construction company or was it something different?
It was called Trevi Manufacturing, so we did all the architectural details for a lot of the buildings, the nightclubs.
Like that.
And we did that one, then we did that 90-foot dome in a cow phase 2, a lot of theme type work.
He was amazing. Really.
I'm not
Still
doing
is.
it.
Well, back then, too. He still is.
Any other questions from anybody? Don't see any on Zoom.
It's just, we've answered all your questions.
Yeah.
We've done a good job.
What's one thing you regret that you wish you did differently?
I wish I would have aimed a lot higher. I held back on the vision for Forte because I didn't think I was good enough, or I didn't think I could do it, or I didn't think that I had enough capital, or I didn't think I had the right connections, or I made a bunch of stuff up in my head that wasn't true, and I listened to it, and I should have started a decade earlier. So fail quick. Go at it, fall on your face. It's gonna hurt, only for a minute, but you know, might as well get it over with.
Regrets? No?
I don't know. I mean, life is up and downs. I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, you should have regrets. I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but I mean, I always try to look at the positive side of things. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Regrets, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Lucky, I'm a lucky guy, you know, very, very important. I've survived a lot of things that successful.
Any other questions?
I'm looking. Okay. What is one quality or attribute you look for in a candidate? It's a hiring
That's good. We
question.
didn't touch on that. We didn't touch on
Hiring
that. Attitude.
attitude.
Yeah, you can
Okay.
teach people technical things, but if they have the wrong attitude,
Yeah.
they're not willing to learn, they're not willing to, play well with others. Then, sorry, you're not gonna fit in.
Attitude is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if people have the right attitude,
Right.
others will be willing to help them, to teach them, and they will be receptive. And it's all, attitude is probably the number one thing that gets you success in life. You have to have the right attitude. You have to be willing to go a little extra and never ever quit. Never quit.
Teach skills.
I would add to attitude is a good character.
Yeah.
Good character.
Yeah, someone who's trustworthy.
Yeah, trustworthy is,
There is another question. How can schools better prepare future architects for the demands of leadership roles?
Fundamental transformation. I'm just kind of kidding. They've been struggling. There's a huge gap between the academy and the practice.
Okay.
And that bridge has not been successfully bridged very well, in my opinion. They don't teach enough about the practice of architecture. They're teaching us as students to become problem solvers, which is all fine and good. But I see these kids coming out of school and they're not prepared for the world of practice of architecture. Not even close. And
That is everywhere. That is everywhere.
It's across the board everywhere.
And I think that when coming out of school, like a lot of people, I think that like a residency process when you're a doctor is to go spend a year at a contractor before you can really go like look at the sticks and bricks of how things go. So a lot of the work we do is a lot of rework and kids a bunch of the like this, right? Like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's not.
yeah, I think construction, working construction is a great, I mean, it's a great experience for all of us as architects. And helped me a lot in the beginning.
Yeah, less academic, more.
More practical.
I mean, that's one
But
of
actually here is.
Same in Argentina,
No, we don't have the internship.
you don't have the interest,
We go to school and then,
you're licensed,
yeah,
just like India.
yes. Okay, you have to do your own path and try to learn and find your mentors.
That's a dangerous path.
Yeah, but here, I think the internship is something that helps.
We do have that, I mean, that's what IDP is all about, so. But I still see, we're not changing.
And then a number of schools are going to the program where they also they get involved with construction while they're going to school and getting some experience that way and getting their experience in the offices. And I think that's a good program. I think it's a 6-year, 7-year program.
Oh,
Yeah. And I think that's a good program because you're going to come out of that, you're going to have the experience that you need, and you're going to have the education that you need, and you're going to be ready to get out in the field and go to work and know what you're doing.
I would say give back to the universities where you can be professional and volunteer.
Yeah.
Talk, sort of guest lecture at the pro practices I've done over the years. And they're just hungry for that kind of information. Too often the professors, some have experience, some don't. But I think that having a seasoned veteran like you or any one of us would be very helpful. And so as I'm getting to the point in my career where I'm kind of sort of wrapping it up, I'm thinking about doing more of that. And I think, Casey did that, right?
I can't tell you
Jeff
the
Holmes.
number of times I go down to the school and I'll get the ladder from the janitor and we'll take a couple ceiling tiles out so the kids know that the ceiling and the roof are not the same. What's that pipe? What is this? What is, and it's just
It's unbelievable.
kind of fun to do that kind of stuff. I don't know if I should be up on the ladder in the classroom with the kids, but
I will tell you though, some of my staff had with Casey. And they said he was one of the best professors we ever had. And so there's still that kind of sort of feedback I'm getting, even after he's long gone from the teaching profession. But having a real practicing architect teach at the university level, it's imperative. So to answer that question.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we'll end it. So Scott, Ed, Bill, thank you for your time and your
Thank you.
insight.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.